We tend to think of fairy tales as bedtime stories, written down a few centuries ago by authors like Charles Perrault or the Brothers Grimm. It is easy to look at this illustration of Little Red Riding Hood meeting the wolf, or read a text of Beauty and the Beast, and assume these stories were born in the drawing rooms of early modern Europe. But in the 19th century, Wilhelm Grimm noticed a strange pattern. The exact same stories were being told by people living thousands of miles apart, from the snowy forests of Scandinavia to the villages of India. Grimm realized it was highly unlikely that these far-flung cultures had independently invented the exact same plots or simply traded them back and forth. Instead, he proposed that these widespread stories were inherited from a single, ancient ancestral population. If Grimm was right, these stories are far older than children's literature. They are ancient cultural markers that connect hundreds of modern populations back to a common ancestral root. Testing that hypothesis, however, proved incredibly difficult. When archaeologists want to study an ancient culture, they dig up pottery shards or fossilized bones. But spoken words leave absolutely no physical trace. Oral traditions are inherently unstable. When a story is told around a fire and passed from generation to generation, the details mutate. The names change, the settings shift, and the original form quickly blurs. To make matters worse, cultures constantly borrow stories from neighboring tribes through trade or conquest. Folklorists call this horizontal transmission, and it scrambles the historical record even further. Without a physical fossil record to untangle this messy web of borrowing and adapting, tracing the true age of folklore looked like a scientific dead end. That dead end lasted for over a century, until researchers Jamshid Tehrani and Sara Graça da Silva took a different approach. They realized they didn't need physical fossils if they treated these stories like biological species undergoing descent with modification. They turned to computational phylogenetics. These are the exact mathematical models that evolutionary biologists use to map how species branch off. This branching tree of Indo-European languages maps 275 magic tales. The algorithm filters out the noise of horizontal transmission, cultures borrowing from one another. What remains are stories passed down vertically, directly from parent to child. The data showed that fairy tales obey the exact same evolutionary laws as biological organisms, and because linguists already know when these ancient languages branched off from one another, researchers could finally date the stories themselves. The initial results pushed the timeline of literature back thousands of years. The models revealed that the roots of Beauty and the Beast are about 4,000 years old, while Jack and the Beanstalk stretches back 5 millennia. But the most startling discovery involved a lesser-known folktale called The Smith and the Devil. The phylogenetic data traced this specific story back an astonishing 6,000 years, all the way to the Proto-Indo-European root language. As seen in this workspace, the story centers entirely on the forge. The blacksmith trades his soul for the power to weld any materials together, which he uses to trick a malevolent supernatural being. Look at the craftsmanship of this ancient bronze sword. The folktale's plot explicitly relies on the technology of welding and metallurgy. Its birth perfectly aligns with the early spread of Bronze Age metallurgy, when these exact metalworking techniques were first being mastered. This alignment of folklore and archaeological evidence shows that our ancestors were directly encoding their real-world technological revolutions into their mythology. It reveals an incredible resilience in human memory. These narratives survived the rise and fall of entire empires, passing across thousands of miles without a single word ever being written down. They were thriving millennia before modern languages like English, French, or Italian even existed. Oral tradition functions as a stable data storage system. The surface details mutate to fit the current era, while the core cultural DNA remains preserved. We still rely on that same cultural DNA today. When you watch a modern blockbuster like Star Wars, you are watching filmmakers recombine the exact same narrative motifs that originated in the Bronze Age. And that means whenever we sit down to watch a movie, read a book, or tell a story, we are participating in an unbroken 6,000-year-old ritual of human connection around the campfire.